We are here today in Chronogram's editorial offices with our contributor Sparrow, who's written a piece for our March issue on riding buses. Sparrow, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it is entirely my pleasure.
So did you take the bus here today?
Yes, of course.
And where did you come from?
From Phoenicia, New York, which is where I live.
And what was your experience like on the bus today?
Well, my experience was pretty average for the experience that I have on buses in general. First of all, there's waiting for the bus, which is a whole part of taking buses. There's an enormous amount of waiting. In a sense, the whole experience is waiting. You're waiting for the bus, usually with some anxiety because the bus... Well, I was waiting for the UCAT. I take the UCAT, the Ulster County Area Transit Bus. If I'm going a shortish distance, like 25 miles from Phoenicia to here, I take the UCAT. If I'm going to New York City, I take the Trailways because it's the only way to get there. But if I were to take the Trailways to go here today, it would have cost me something like $7. And on the UCAT, it's only $2. But the UCAT can be unpredictable, and there are moments in my life, I hate to say, where it just hasn't come. And never, Or maybe it'll like 2 hours later, the next one will come. And then also it can go by you. You're waiting there, and then you're waving to it, and it just goes right by you for some complex reason. You're not as visible as you think you are. You momentarily lapsed into pure invisibility. The driver is thinking about his girlfriend. Who knows? So there's a certain amount of anxiety. Plus, it's freezing. It's now February, could be the 16th. And so it's very cold out. I'm standing there. I don't know when it's going to come. I'm waiting. I'm in suspension. I'm walking back and forth. I walk forwards. I walk backwards. I'm scared to turn my back on the bus because the bus might go past me at that moment. So I tend to kind of walk forward and then walk backwards. I'm kind of singing my mantra, working on my spiritual life.
I would have thought that taking the bus would have been more of a kind of a less anxiety-ridden pursuit. Those of us who drive our cars everywhere, it's so anxiety-inducing to be caught in traffic. But obviously, we're sold on this idea of freedom in our cars. We can drive anywhere.
Right.
Whereas you're kind of waiting always either to get on the bus, or then you're on the bus. You're waiting to get off the bus. You're in a kind of a state of suspension on the bus.
Exactly. Plus, I can't tell the bus, you know what? Why don't we just go to the laundromat for a while? There's no freedom to deviate from the route of the bus. You can't say, I wonder how my friend Arnold is getting along. Maybe if you're really tight with the bus driver, but I've never seen that.
What's your first memory of being on a bus?
My first memory? Well, I grew up in Manhattan in a housing project, and I never took the bus. I never took a school bus. I'm not sure I saw a school bus until I was, fairly old. Maybe in college I saw my first school bus. I mean, in Manhattan. This was in Manhattan. I forgot. I don't know if I said that. Well, yes, I went to camp. And at camp, I would take the bus. And maybe that's one of the reasons I love buses so much, is I kind of loved camp.
And camp was in the woods somewhere?
Well, camp was on Nagle Avenue. I lived on 10th Avenue, and, about, maybe 14 blocks away was my camp in Inwood. So, but the camp would, yes, the camp would go up to Pearl River.
Okay.
Yeah, by bus. So my, association with a bus is where you sing 100 bottles of beer on the wall. And also, because I'm now 59, that means that I went to camp during really the height of the folk music boom. So there would be a counselor on the bus typically, a kind of slightly, what call it, 5 o'clock shadowed counselor with a acoustic guitar singing one of those great songs that one of those compelling songs when you're 10 years old. And
We Shall Overcome. Have you ever driven a car?
driven a car? Yes. I was going to put this in the essay, but it turned out there wasn't time. I've had 2 learner's permits at 2 separate occasions. One was at my developmentally correct age, 17. I was in high school. I was at the Bronx High School of Science. I was sort of slowly becoming a hippie, but not yet. And my father would take me up to the Cross County Shopping Center in Westchester in the empty parking lot and teach me a few driving tips. Then he felt I'd reached the point where I was ready to go on the FDR Drive. He's teaching me to fucking drive on the FDR Drive. The FDR Drive is like, it's like the equivalent of a place to drive what like that Tombstone, Wyoming is to like, a place to learn how to, flower arranging. I mean, there's no rules on the FDR Drive. So there's no cops. There's nothing. People just do whatever. It's like a jazz improvisation in the form of speed. So my father said, well, go into that next. I'm going down the FDR Drive, and things are going okay, not great. And then he says, go into the next lane. Just, arbitrarily tells me. And it's like, I start to go into the next lane. He said, no, there's a car there. It's like, this is a terrifying business, a car's in motion. It's just not my sort of thing, I felt.
Did your father give you advice about sex, too?
Never. I don't think he ever, luckily.
What was your other experience with getting a learner's permit?
Oh, yeah, so then in 1983, I'm thinking it's like 82, 83, I, for some unknowable reason, I again got a learner's permit. And my friends and I went down to the Spoleto Festival in Charleston, South Carolina. We were on a kind of wild road trip, like in the height of the kind of post-punk era, 4 of us. And there was a point where I drove maybe 100 miles in South Carolina. Everything went very well. There was one point where we were in a little town and somebody was crossing in front of me. And I, because even though it was Route 95, there's points where it becomes kind of like a street. Anyway, this is my memory. And I said, a person, what do I do? That's the part I remember. And my friend looked at me like, well, try not to hit that person. I forget what happened. But, it went all right, but then I never pursued it. And then I realized later that was illegal because when you have a learner's permit, you cannot drive outside your state. So I should mention this.
The statute of limitations is probably passed. So, have you driven since at all?
At all? No. I mean, my friend EO, you know EO Stubblefield,
sure.
The famous
artist.
Performance artist?
Yes, indeed.
Well, she arranged that she would teach me how to drive psychically. She would send me psychic driving lessons. This was about like 8 years ago.
How are they going?
Well, for a while I felt that it was really happening. I felt that she was sending them to me and I was getting a little more confidence with driving without doing it, but just sort of just a sense that you have about yourself. You start to feel, maybe for you it's not like this, but for us non-drivers, there's a kind of a scale of non-driver.
How so?
You know what I mean? Like there's a kind of like, here's over here, non-driver, absolute, here, driver, you see? And then you can be kind of, within the non-driver area, you can be closer and closer to being a driver.
Mm-hmm. Well, so if you felt like, let me put it this way, if you...
Like a virgin could be closer and closer, but not quite there.
So if you and I were driving down the road together, and I slumped over at the wheel,
Yes.
and I was driving, and I couldn't drive anymore, and you realized you had to get me to the hospital right away. Would you feel confident in getting behind the wheel? confident and competent enough.
Competent, yeah.
Would you,
well, this is the subject of numerous dreams of mine, or maybe I should call them nightmares, where for one reason or another, either that happens, but more often, sometimes I'm in the back seat and the person dies, and then I have to somehow physically get into the front seat, which is difficult in itself, then learn how to drive, then keep the car from crashing. Usually I wake up before, supposedly you can't die in your dreams, do you know that? So I've never killed myself in a driving dream. Mm-hmm. I'll say that for myself. But I usually wake up right around, there's usually a point where I'm trying to remember what you do with your foot. The foot thing, I think, is kind of what frightens me, I think, about driving.
That's like playing the piano, isn't it? You have to work the pedals and also the keyboard.
And yet I do play the piano.
Oh,
I mean, without having any technical skill. I don't know notes. I'm kind of an improvisational pianist. Mm-hmm. But and I work the pedal. I just work one pedal. But I think that's all you use.
I don't know what the other pedal's for. There are two pedals.
Or there's three.
Oh, God.
Depending on the piano.
All right. There probably are three. Yeah. Shows how long it's been.
No, I've tried the other pedals because while I was flunking out of Cornell, I spent a lot of time playing the pianos. They had an enormous number of pianos at Cornell. And when I perhaps should have been studying, I would often be improvising on the piano. And I tried those other pedals, the ones to the left of the pedal I use, and nothing really happens with them. I can report.
You have to, maybe you have to have a very sensitive ear. You have to be
it could be that you may have to actually be playing the piano and not just goofing around. Mm. But yeah, I think that I could probably drive. I just the other day I got the idea, maybe I'll start driving in my driveway, because I have a fairly capacious driveway, as you may remember. Mm-hmm. Because my neighbor, I live in a double wide trailer, and my neighbor in the next trailer was a trucker. So he had a big truck in the driveway, so we've got a lot of room in the driveway. And our new neighbors just moved out, so I have a lot of room to just drive around the driveway.